in for a real treat. Today we're going to be hearing from Jerry Hicks, Jerry Darkwolf Hicks, and he'll be talking about Mandela Effect theories. Everything from simulation to Cern. And, okay, I'll read some of the background and biography in case you don't know about Jerry Darkwolf Hicks. Well, obviously we're good friends, have been for 4 years, working on all kinds of things together. I'm going to stand out of the light. And basically, he's had quite a long history. I don't know if he puts this in here, but he's one of the people who really has been tracking UFOs, the paranormal, working in radio, broadcasting for quite some time. So his official little intro here is Jerry Hicks, also known as Darkwolf, is a paranormal researcher with more than 25 years of experience and research under his belt, whose main topic of focus is currently the Mandela Effect. Jerry is the founder of the annual West Coast Mandela Effect Conference, also known as IMEC. We call him the father of IMEC, and current president of the International Mandela Effect Conference. He enjoys creating projects to bring together the Mandela Effect community as a whole in order to try to find an answer to this most amazing phenomenon. He is the first person to do a theory-based Mandela Effect YouTube channel, which is still active to this day, covering all of the main theories concerning the cause of the Mandela Effect while remaining based in scientific realm. Would you please welcome and give him a big hand of applause, Jerry Darkwolf Hicks.
Your mic. Thank you so much. What an honor to be introduced by the great Cynthia Sue Larson. As she said, we are really, really good friends, have been for about 4 years since we started this thing. I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. This is my first official conference talk in person, so there's that. And for those wondering, it's in person. I did give one in 2020, but it wasn't in person, it was digital. So you can cheat on those, you can have your talk right in front of you, you know. Not so easy in person, is it? I'm a paranormal researcher for over 30 years now. When that was written, it was over 25 years. I reached my 30-year point just last year. Almost a decade just in Mandela Effect research. So I started researching the Mandela Effect in 2015. It was very, very small back then. It had all of 4 Mandela Effects. So I've really seen this grow a lot. I do have a radio show twice a week on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network. Wednesday night we discuss paranormal topics, including the Mandela Effect. And on Thursday nights we do more political topics. So if you're into political stuff, check me out on Thursday nights. If you're into the paranormal, Wednesday nights, Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, riponrabbithole.com. I am the father of IMEC. That is an official title, ladies and gentlemen. We all were founders, and they kept calling me the founder of IMEC, and I refused to accept the singular title as founder because it wasn't just me. It was a team of us that put this together. So the whole group board got together and voted, you are now the father of IMEC. So I will take that. That is my official title now, ladies and gentlemen. So the 3 criteria we're going to use today, I'm going to talk about theories. And theories has been my thing the whole time I've been in the paranormal universe, if you will. When it comes to UFOs, I always tried to think in my mind, how do the UFOs work? How can I break this down in a way that physics would explain this? And one of my goals has always been to bring science and the paranormal together. Because my theory is science, or paranormal is just science undiscovered or ununderstood, misunderstood. I don't think it's anything way out there woo. I think it's just woo because the scientists have refused to look at the right parts of explaining it yet. But my whole thing in paranormal, like I said, ghost, I tried to figure out how does the spirit realm work? What evidence do we have to suggest how this may or may not work? So this has been my whole thing the whole time I've studied paranormal is I want explanations. I want how and why. That's always been my question. And today we're going to go through a number of theories that have been suggested by the Mandela Effect community. And we're going to go through 3 questions to try to see if they explain it or not. Question 1, it has to explain all categories of the Mandela Effect. So does it explain the Mandela Effect? It has to cover body changes, map changes, Bible changes, you name it, it's got to cover it. From Berenstein Bears to why the sun is white, right? It's got to cover all changes. Number 2, Apparently, I had ones down the board. I didn't realize that till just now, but they're all equally important, I guess. Also, doing a PowerPoint presentation, for those that have not, is not easy at all. Clearly. It has to predict future events. So a good theory will predict what is to come next. Any scientific theory will make predictions. So if it can't predict new effects or predict when the new effects will occur, it's not going to be a valuable theory. And number 3, it has to have a backing in science. That's going to be the fun one, isn't it, folks? Every theory, to be legit, has to have a backing somehow in science. So let's go on to our first one here, the torn veil theory. When I first found the Mandela Effect, I had been studying reincarnation. And one of my thoughts was that I had found the story of James Leininger, who had reincarnated from a World War II pilot 50 years prior to his birth. So my idea was perhaps James had slipped through a little hole in the veil. And every hole you have ever had in a pair of jeans, I'm sure you've watched it go from a little catch to half the leg, right? So my theory was the veil was torn, and more oddities would be coming through. That was the first thing I thought of right off the top, right off the cuff. Same night I found it, as a matter of fact. The veil between worlds had become thin, like I said, and the extra spiritual energy would be the cause for the ME. So, what evidence do we have that this might be the case, aside from James Leininger and the reincarnation stories that we have? Aside from speculation, we don't have any. This was my first theory. I didn't say it was a good theory. I said it was my first theory. All right. What about, does it predict future effects? No. Does it have a scientific backing? Anybody? Maybe. No. A lot of spiritual backing. Science doesn't speak of the veil very often. So I would say no on that one. And does it explain the Mandela Effect, ladies and gentlemen? Would I really put the first one to explain the Mandela Effect as the first theory? No. All right, so that's the first theory, the torn veil. Clearly, that is not the correct theory. Time travel. This is one that has bothered me for a long time. When we hear about the Mandela Effect, of course, one of the first theories we come up with is maybe somebody time traveled and started changing things. Which in the early days, that would have made a little more sense, right? This states that the Mandela Effect is being caused by the actions of a time traveler. Two problems with this, though, that I have. By the rules of time travel that we know from sci-fi movies, and yes, I'm getting them from sci-fi movies. Maybe the rules are different. I know, right? By the rules of time travel, the only one who remembers the way that something was before the traveler is the time traveler. So let's use the baby Hitler example. I know you guys have heard this 1,000 times, but we're going to hear it again. So if I go back in time and I kill baby Hitler, yeah, I know, it's dark. Nobody would know the name Hitler. Not to say the Holocaust wouldn't have still occurred, but nobody would know it under the name Hitler except me. Oh, I see how easy it is to do that. Except me, who was the time traveler, right? Anybody else would know it under Stalin or whoever ended up being that person, right? So that's my first problem with time travel. Number 2, now this is a caveat, the butterfly effect. This is where one action basically sets off a chain of events. I could see this being maybe a version of time travel. They could have done it if I go back and change Kit Kat and that small change ripples out to change the sun and 90 other things. Maybe, but again, that's speculation, right? So what evidence do we have for time travel? None. Aside from Back to the Future and Star Trek, of course. Unfortunately, we don't have any tangible evidence that could suggest this is the case. We haven't found a working time machine setting on the corner yet, right? Then science would have a real problem if we did. Does it predict future effects? No. Time travel, unfortunately, cannot predict when or what the future effects would be. Does it have scientific backing? Yes and no, actually. There's nothing in science that prohibits time travel. It's one of my favorite lines by Michio Kaku. There's no rule in physics that says a time machine cannot exist. They just haven't figured out how to make it work yet. So, yeah, it does have some scientific backing. As a matter of fact, Einstein's theories tell us how to do it, believe it or not. I was quite surprised when I found that. I expected that to be a no answer, so I did not expect to have scientific backing for this. Does it explain the Mandela Effect, though? Although it's very clear in the early days, it would have been very viable. There were only a couple Mandela effects. Perhaps it was a time traveler. 8 years on, I don't think it's a logical idea. Unless these guys are doing time travel journeys every day or every couple months, I don't see that being a viable option. And I don't know why they would be going back and changing Berenstain Bears into Kit Kat logo, right? I mean, I don't see how that could lead to world peace or world war. It doesn't make sense to me. Then again, maybe it's a butterfly effect. Our next theory, this is one everybody is very, very well aware of, I'm sure, and that is the Cern theory. Who here knows what Cern is? Raise your hand. I don't think anybody didn't raise their hand. That's awesome. This theory states the LHC, the Cern, is responsible for the Mandela Effect. Now, whether they're doing it on purpose or not is still left to be questioned. But the theory says that they are knowing or unknowingly doing it. Possible reasons they could be doing it include quantum entanglement or black holes and portals. So if they are accidentally causing the Mandela Effect, perhaps it's some of their research into quantum entanglement or some of the research into black holes. I'd like to stop right here real quick. Quantum entanglement, there was a experiment done a week or two ago? A couple weeks ago, where they had filmed quantum entanglement for the first time. Which is fascinating, right? To film something on that level. Would you folks know that the picture they took of them entangling looked like a yin-yang symbol? Wow. Blew my mind. I mean, it's perfect. The little dots, the whole, it's the exact yin-yang symbol. I could do a whole talk just about that, I'm sure. But we're not here to talk about yin-yangs today. We're here to talk about Cern. It has some Emmys surrounding it, of course. We know that now they created the internet. Who remembers them creating the internet originally? Show of hands. 1, 2, 3. 3 people, 4 people. Okay. I remember being created by DARPA in the American government personally. So, Large Hadron Collider or Large Hadron Collider? Anybody? Hadron. Hadron? So I remember Hadron originally. And there's a few of us that do remember Hadron. And we could be wrong, perhaps, or perhaps we were in another reality where it was Hadron, right?
2001.
That makes sense. So what evidence do we have that Cern could be responsible for the Mandela Effect? Looks like we got quite a bit, but it's all circumstantial. All of it, so let's check it out. We know that high-energy particle experiments are occurring that deal with the very nature and fabric of the universe. We know that for a fact. They've admitted that. We know that the LHC has run at different intervals and takes large periods of time off. So the last break lasted 3 years. In those 3 years, did we have Mandela Effect shifts? Yeah. Oh, yeah, we did. So I don't think Cern would be responsible for it if it was shut off. That's just my opinion. We'll keep going. We know that in the Happy at Cern video, if you've ever seen that, there's a scientist holding a sign that says Bond number 1 on top and Mandela on bottom. This was interpreted by some in the community to be referencing Barry Nelson, who was the first James Bond. So if you put together Nelson on top and Mandela on bottom, you got Nelson Mandela. Now, why would Cern be doing that? That is odd. Although it's thought that Bond 1 could be referencing the first bonded particles in the LHC, which could also be the catalyst for the Mandela Effect. We don't know. Was this a wink and a nod of just having fun at Cern, just kind of saying, hey, yeah, we get it, we might be behind it, or were they just playing with us? We don't know. Perhaps they're just having fun with the community. Perhaps they've heard the rumors and, ha, we're going to joke with you. Check this out. You know, Febreze did that on April Fool's Day one year. They added the E back to it. So I don't know if they are responsible for it or not. All the evidence is highly circumstantial in this case, right? Does it predict future effects? Does Cern predict future effects? No. Does it have scientific backing? I see some nods. Maybe, sort of. Yes and no. The Large Hadron Collider is a piece of scientific equipment that is being used to do countless experiments on the nature of reality. Now, in relation to the Mandela Effect, we don't know. Does it explain the Mandela Effect? No. I just don't feel the evidence strongly enough constitutes this to be an explanation. As mentioned before, they turn off the machine for large amounts of time. Years in some cases. In that time, Cern is not operating. Mandela Effect shifts still occur, like I said a moment ago. With that said, though, I have to caveat this. There are tens of thousands of particle accelerators around the world, whether it be in universities or in some guy's garage in the backside of the city, right? They're all over the world. So even though Cern itself may not be the one responsible, I cannot fully rule out particle accelerators still having an impact. And that's about where we stand with that one.
Could it have a delayed response, though?
It could. That's what I say. I can't fully rule it out, but without having more information on when these are running, what experiments are being done, you know, we're unable to grab that data, of course. But if we had that data, we'd probably be able to break it down a little more to really nail that down, whether it's effective or not. Which I'm trying to find, but that's not been easy. The experiments, though high energy, are actually minuscule energy compared to the amount we all get from the sun every single day. So they are high energy experiments, but they're not high energy on that level. So can that have an effect on reality? I don't know. It's just a theory, right? Now, you cannot talk about Cern without talking about quantum computers, and vice versa. You can't talk about quantum computers without talking about Cern. This theory states that quantum computers have affected our world to the point that we now see the Mandela Effect. So what's a quantum computer? That is a really good question. If I can get this to play.
This quote is from a respectable scientist, in fact, one of the founders of this field, that may look a little strange to you who don't follow theoretical physics, but there is a very clear prediction that our most successful theory of nature makes, and that is that there are an enormous number, mind-bogglingly large number, of parallel realities, as real as this one, that have different consistent histories. So imagine a world where all of the laws of physics as we know them are obeyed, but different decisions were made along the way. Different decisions at the level of tiny microscopic particles, different decisions all the way up to what you chose to eat for lunch, and whether you chose to come to this session or not. Quantum mechanics makes a very specific prediction that all of those are as real as the thing that you remember. And this is bizarre, because we don't see those other things. But science has reached the point now where we can build machines that exploit those other worlds. And quantum computers are perhaps the most exciting of all of these that we have within, or almost within our grasp right now. So people from a physics background love this. They want to understand the world. They want to understand the universe, how it all works.
So he just basically said they work by using quantum computers to operate. That's more than a little strange to me, as well as, there we go. I had to figure out where I was. So according to the guy who is working with these things, they work by using parallel universes to operate. Now, that don't sound like something the Mandela Effect might be connected to. Not at all. So like I said, we can't talk about Cern without talking about quantum computers. So we've talked about this slide already. Okay. So what evidence do we have that quantum computers could be doing this? We know quantum computers work using the principles of quantum mechanics like superposition and entanglement. We also know that some interpretations of quantum mechanics include parallel realities as a fundamental aspect of the universe. We know that one of the guys directly involved with D-Wave that we just heard from describes it as functioning as operating in parallel universes or realities. This is how the guy described it operating, folks. Like, you know, you say you turn your computer on, the power goes here, it does that. This guy said you turn the power on and it goes to another world. That's insane. We know that Cern owns a D-Wave quantum computer, and we know, like with any new technology, that it could have unintended side effects. So what evidence do we have? Quite a bit. Does it predict future effects? Maybe. We honestly don't have enough empirical data at this time to suggest either way, as you were asking a moment ago. If we know when each of these systems were being used, or how they were being used at the time of a shift, perhaps we can make a better determination. We just don't have the data. However, I don't see us really ever having access to that kind of data. They aren't exactly forthcoming with that information. Does it have scientific backing? Does quantum computers have scientific backing? I see some head nods going, yeah. Quantum computers work on scientific principles of quantum mechanics, so it definitely has scientific backing. Parallel realities is becoming more widely accepted as a theory to explain the strange world of quantum mechanics. So both of these are accepted as scientific theory, at least to some degree. Now, not all scientists agree in parallel universes, right? But at least to some degree, as we know, like with Mr. Campbell on day one, we have more and more that are looking into these concepts. Oh, I guess it would help if I hit the right button. Where am I going? Up. Wrong way, yeah. If I knew what I was doing, folks, I'd be dangerous. Does it explain the Mandela Effect? No, I don't think it explains the Mandela Effect, although quantum computers like D-Wave cannot be ruled out as a possibility. I personally don't think this is the culprit. One reason I believe this is that quantum computers were developed well after 2010 or even 2001, when the Mandela Effect was first being raised as a point of discussion. In 2001, for those that don't know, the word Mandela Effect, to my knowledge, was first used by our very own Cynthia Sue Larson while speaking on the Art Bell show, discussing how Mandela had died for them back in 2001. As a matter of fact, as a side note, Art Bell had a large number of people who started faxing him. Yeah, if you remember what a fax machine is, congratulations. Who started faxing and sending him letters and whatnot saying, hey, I remember Mandela dying too. Are you serious? What's going on here? So even though the phrase was coined in 2010, people were noticing this long before. But that's D-Wave. So no, I don't think D-Wave explains the Mandela Effect. It's a good theory. I just can't make it work like this. So what about our next theory? Jumper theory. This theory right here is the one that everybody in the community tends to jump to, for lack of better terms. The theory states that we are shifting or moving between different realities or timelines. Of course, we've heard many, many, many variations of this one right here, right? Most popular one in the community, the most evidence to suggest this to be the answer. So I'll give my theory later, but this ain't it. However, this has the most evidence that I've found to suggest this is probably the closest we're going to get. There's more coming up. I might be wrong toward the end. We'll find out. But when it comes to either a single or a multiple timeline theory, the multiple timeline theory tends to get a lot more evidence. The concept of multiverse or multiverses is not a new one. Some physicists argue that the multiverse is a philosophical notion rather than a scientific notion because it can't be empirically falsified. However, you have physicists like Max Tegmark and Brian Greene who have proposed different classification schemes for multiverses and universes. By the way, I really don't think we need to lead with this when we're talking to John Q. Normie about the Mandela Effect. I don't think we need to start out, did you know you're jumping realities? They tend not to take that all that well. I usually wait till they ask, well, what's causing this? Well, we have some ideas, right? Well, I've seen people, we're jumping timelines. You have a good day. It's nice talking to you. But yeah, I wouldn't lead with this, with that theory for sure. What evidence do we have? The very nature of the Mandela Effect. This is why most people jump to this first off. The fact that things literally change in reality and large numbers of us agree on how it used to be. So that could suggest we're literally on a different reality line, a different timeline. It could suggest that. Doesn't mean it's true. It means it suggests it, right? The fact that the changes continue to occur in waves and we're not a one-time event. So this, of course, gives the idea that we're shifting to a new timeline, a new timeline, a new timeline, a new timeline. The fact that we see changes in places that were quite frankly unexpected, and I said it yesterday, like the Holy Scriptures. That just feels so out of place to me. Map changes, history changes. Although all changes are retroactively, I mean specifically history as it was recorded. So we know Berenstain Bears changed in history back to the first day it was created. But I mean like World War II battlefields, or different like historical events, the Titanic, the Hindenburg, different iconic events that we have found changes in history. The most common first conclusion with those who begin to research the Mandela Effect is that we've somehow found ourselves in a parallel reality. Of course, like I said, this is the most common explanation of the Mandela Effect. So what evidence do we have? Numerous, but circumstantial. We don't have anything that we can pick them and say, aha, here's our smoking gun right here, right? We got a lot of it, though. Does it predict future effects? No. Does it have scientific backing? Oh, yeah. This has a ton of scientific backing, folks. We've got Marx Tegmark's 4 types of universes. Then we've got Brian Greene's 9 types of multiverse. This was all new information to me, by the way. I've done a lot of research on this. And until I actually started doing research for this talk, I didn't know about these 9 down here. I had heard of Tegmark's 4. This is new to me. I don't know if it's a Mandela Effect. I don't know if I'm coming to a new reality where these existed, maybe. But that's the different scientific versions of the multiverse. I see a couple people taking pictures, so I'll wait just a second to flip the slide there. All right, there we go. Max Tegmark's universes, bubble universe. According to this model, our universe is just one of many bubbles floating in an infinite cosmic foam. Each bubble represents a separate universe with its own distinct properties. These bubbles are constantly forming and expanding, creating an endless array of universes with diverse physical characteristics. This theory suggests the inflammatory period of the early universe gave rise to the formation of all these different bubble universes. So that's bubble universe from Max Tegmark. Second idea, membrane universes postulates the existence of higher dimensional structures called branes, on which our universe is situated. Branes, B-R-A-N-E, not A-I-N, right? Like a slice of bread within a higher dimensional space. Other branes exist alongside ours, each representing another universe with different laws and properties of physics. These branes can sometimes interact, leading to interesting phenomena and potential clues about the nature of our universe. It's thought that one of these interactions was the Big Bang. Or the many worlds interpretation. We've all, I'm sure, heard of this one. This was actually made famous by, what's his name? Hugh Everett, thank you. I could not think of that to save my life. According to this theory, every time a quantum event occurs, hi, how we doing? I keep running into this thing. We're going to be good friends by the end. The universe splits into multiple branches during every quantum event, each representing a different outcome. For example, if a particle can exist in multiple states simultaneously, the many worlds interpretation suggests, so I'm not going to go through that. Basically, it says that if I came to this conference in this reality, perhaps I missed it in another reality. Perhaps I didn't go to work in that reality and I got fired, or I went to work in another reality and I got a promotion, right? These are 2 different timelines, this is what we think of basically when we think of the multi-world concept, is this many worlds interpretation, where we're all ourselves, but we've made different decisions along the way, like the guy in the video was talking about, right? And then we have Max Tegmark's ultimate ensemble. This is the idea that every mathematical structure, including all possible universes within different physical laws and dimensions, exist in a vast ensemble. So kind of like the first 2, it's just a whole bunch of different universes that are out there together, right? According to this model, our universe is just one realization amongst countless others. Don't you love it when your tongue decides to quit working in the middle of a talk? Quilted universe. So these are Brian Greene's 9 types of multiverse. Once again, these are physicists. These are scientists. This is all scientific evidence for the multiverse, or at least theories anyway, right? The quilted multiverse. This suggests that the universe is infinite. Now, some of these are trippy. Some of these are kind of hard to wrap your head on. Due to the infinite number of possible particle configurations within the cosmic horizon, the same particle arrangements are repeated over infinite space. So in other words, if you go far enough out into space, you could find another Milky Way, another Andromeda, another Earth, another everything that you have here. It would just start repeating over and over. And the farther you go, you would find more and more repeats. Instead of jumping to a new reality, it's jumping to a new part of space, right? It's not actually leaving a reality. The inflationary multiverse. This theory is based on the concept of internal inflation. Different regions of space stop inflating at different times. This results in bubble universes that also may have different laws of physics. So I'm assuming this to mean, and this is an assumption, I could be wrong. For those at home, if I'm wrong, congratulations, right? This basically to me means that once it stops inflating, once it stops moving, it would break off into another bubble universe, and each one of us, each area of the universe would become a bubble. That's what I think it means. If not, I'm sure I'll get a lot of emails telling me why I'm wrong. The brain universe, like we heard about a moment ago in Max Tegmark's brain theory. In string theory, our universe exists on a 3-dimensional brain within a higher dimensional space. Other brains may exist as parallel universes. Or the cyclic multiverse, excuse me. Sorry about that. I had a frog in there. Wolves don't eat frogs that often, but it happens. This model proposes a cyclical process of big bangs and big crunches. So we've heard this a lot in science. The big bang, and then it come to the end, it all crunched down, and it blew up again. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that one. Landscape multiverse. In string theory, there are many possible versions of space-time, each with its own laws of physics. These different universes make up the landscape of universes. So perhaps in another universe, gravity's backwards, right? Perhaps fire has a different temperature. There's all these different what-ifs that could be along the way. Perhaps protons spin the opposite way they spin in this reality, right? They're all the different possibilities. Quantum multiverse. Quantum mechanics suggests that all possible outcomes of quantum events exist in separate universes, just like the many worlds interpretation. So if I go out here to the corner by the Walgreens and I decide to turn left instead of right, well, in some reality, I also turned right, right? Again, this goes back to the many worlds interpretation. And why that is so far offset, I don't know. Apparently, I need to learn how to make these things a little better. Holographic multiverse. This theory suggests the entire universe can be seen as a 2-dimensional information structure painted on the cosmological horizon. I personally am not a fan of the holographic idea. I'm not saying it isn't true. I just don't like the concept. And number 9, the ultimate multiverse, which is basically an encompassment of all of these together. Okay, so apparently I messed up my, I'm sorry, number 8, simulation. Thank you, Cynthia, I missed that one. This proposes the universe is a simulation of complex computer programs, and there could be other simulated universes, which we'll touch more on that one later. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that one. And what evidence do we have for the jumper theory? Circumstantial. Does it predict future effects? No. Does it have scientific backing? Oh, yeah. We just went through a lot of multiverse ideas from science, so I definitely say it has scientific backing. Does that explain the Mandela Effect? No. So, although it would explain in general why things are different and how we remember, different than how we remember them being, if we're literally in a completely different world each time there's an effect, then something being in a different world, being different in that world would be par for the course, and even be expected to be the case, right? So from the human body to music lyrics, map changes, if we were in a new timeline, we would expect to see some of these things differently, right? However, to me, the devil's in the details, folks. To me, this theory starts to break down when you get to the next level of questions, mainly because I don't have answers to these. If you do, I'd love to hear them. I don't mean what ifs, I mean answers. The questions are, If we're timeline jumping, then what's moving? Body or consciousness? Yeah, that'll make your head hurt, won't it? We know that our bodies are different from where we began, from internal organs to the different tattoos and birthmarks that we've heard about moving. So we should assume then that it's the spirit that's moving, right? Okay, I'll take that. So if the spirit is moving, as much as that bothers me, if the consciousness is moving to a new reality, then what was in here before I got here? What was in your body before you got here? What happened to the one that was in your body before you got here? I don't have the answers to these questions, folks. But these are the questions that really make this theory break down for me, because I don't have the answers to these questions. Is it a brand new, fresh reality that we just start going on as if it had always been here? Did it just get created last Tuesday? Right? And all of our memories just stuck in our heads? This theory bothers me a lot, if you can't tell. How do flip-flops come into play? So if I'm on one reality where it's GIF and it jumps to Jiffy all of a sudden, oh man, it's Jiffy, and then it jumps back to GIF. Are those three different realities? Where it was different in the middle and same on the other two? What are the odds of that happening? We don't even know how the jumping works if we are jumping, how these realities are lined up with each other. I would think it would go from, personal opinion, I would think it would go from more subtle to more extreme. So first couple realities, maybe there's less dirt on the ground, right? You wouldn't notice that. Or maybe a bag's out of place. And then the next jump, something a little more. Next jump, by the time we get to the end of the jumps, perhaps the sky will be a golden green or something, right? That's how I would see it playing out. That's just my opinion. So if that would be the case, then flip-flops would make no sense at all. You wouldn't have three universes next to each other if this be the case, that they were that much off of each other, right? That's my opinion. Is it a move back and forth? Like I said, how does reality residue fit into timeline jumping? I had a conversation the other day about reality residue in that. It shouldn't exist. If I move to a whole new timeline, stuff from that timeline should still be there, right? I shouldn't have reality residue on a new timeline. That shouldn't be a thing. So this is why I don't think that the jumper theory fully explains the Mandela Effect, because once you really drill down into questions like these, it really starts to fall apart for me. Now, those at home, if you have the answers to these questions, I want to hear them. Please, love to. So trigger warning, ladies and gentlemen. Trigger warning. You are going to hear some bad words coming up. And I do apologize for those bad words. We are going to talk, ladies and gentlemen, about mismemory. I have to give the mainstream their due. I can't do the theories and ignore their theory, right? I can't be biased. I have to put all the ideas out there. So please hold your tomatoes till the end. Maybe it'll be a good Rotten Tomato score, right? Fruit. There we go with the fruit again. That's where I got that from, right? And I said I didn't have fruit in my slides, right? So this is the most popular mainstream theory. Guys, do you think it's mismemory? No. I didn't hear a single yes in there. I don't either, by the way. As the name implies, this theory states that the Mandela Effect is just a result of false memory. That's it. You guys are just, you didn't remember it right. That's all. What evidence do we have? This theory is ridiculous. This is stupid. Confabulation. I know that's a bad word. That's a really bad word. I'm sorry for cussing on camera. I actually ruined this for them. Back in the early days of the Mandela Effect, they were smacking us on the head with confabulation. I don't think I'm going to make it, by the way. I think it might be a little over. Luckily, we've got some extra time today. But they were smacking us over the head with this confabulation. It's all confabulation. And of course, we hadn't heard this word before, so we really didn't have a lot to argue with it. So I finally decided in the theory series to go and give them, like I have here, give them their own theory. It's only right, like I said. So I went and looked and I found confabulation. And man, I really was not looking forward to presenting this till I found out the theory, the definition, of confabulation. Confabulation means to falsely believe what you're saying, to make up stories that is real to you. You're not intentionally lying. It's just incorrect in the real world. However, this is a two-part definition. That's only the first part of the definition, folks. They forgot to say that this is only really found in people with Korsakoff syndrome from alcohol or people with amnesia. I don't remember having amnesia. I don't know about you guys. But people with people with a lot of mental issues when it comes to like things of amnesia or drinking. If you don't want to, I understand. Show of hands, how many drunks do we have in this room? I didn't see any hands. How many people drink on a regular basis? Okay, one or two maybe. So I think that proves we're not all suffering from Korsakoff syndrome, right? We're not all drunks. We don't all have amnesia. We didn't all just suddenly catch a memory issue at the exact same time. So this blew my mind when I found that they were only giving us half the definition. They were using half the definition to beat us over the head with and make us sound like we're crazy. So when I did my video, I made sure to point out, by the way, guys, here's the other half of your definition. Every now and then you might hear the word confabulation, but you don't hear it like you used to. And it stopped immediately after I put that video out. So I'm not saying I ruined it for them. I'm saying it stopped right after I did it. That's all I'm saying. So that's one reason you don't hear that anymore. You hear mismemory all the time. They jump back to mismemory. They realized we were going to nail them if they kept up with that one.
It's an easier word.
Right, and it's easier for the public, right? This is usually, again, used by people who have failed to actually do their own research on the topic. These are people that just, oh, Mandela Effect, yeah, you're craziest mismemory. I heard about you. You have a good day. Have you looked into it? No, I ain't going to look into that. Well, that's your mistake. Instead of taking the time to explore the subject and find a way to quickly dismiss the idea out of hand, so they got to deal with it. Like I just said, oh, I've heard about you. I don't want to hear about that. Well, look into it. You might be surprised. And then they say something Mandela affected. What evidence do we have for mismemory theory? None. Does it predict future effects?
No.
Nope. Does it have scientific backing?
No.
Yes. It is true that memory is not 100% at all times. Anybody who's tried to remember a large string of numbers knows that's not an easy task. I worked in O'Reilly's for about a year. And their number system, you have to remember the numbers, run back and get the part. I can't tell you the times my brain caught dyslexia when doing this. I'm not a dyslexic person. I was when I worked there. So yes, there is memory issues. We all know this. Like I said, just because we are Mandela affected does not mean that we don't have these issues, folks. We can still get stuff wrong. I think we get a little cocky every now and again as a community. And say, well, I know I remembered it this way. I know this. I'm sure of it. Are you? Are you really? Because we can still have mismemory. I can still forget what I ate at lunch. I can still misremember I ate a hamburger instead of a ham sandwich, right? It can happen to us all, is my point. So I think we do need to bring that down a little bit more. Now, again, is it mismemory causing Mandela effect? Absolutely not. But let's also not pretend that we don't have the human condition of mismemory, all of us in this room, right? I just want to go ahead and put that out there because we do have a habit of doing that from time to time. Does it explain the Mandela effect? Absolutely not. This is definitely not going to be an explanation. So, message theory up next. This is going a lot quicker than I thought it would. I told you I'd have an issue with that. 5, all right. Message theory. This theory suggests there could be hidden messages behind each Mandela effect like a puzzle. Anyone who follows my good friend and fellow IMEC team member Christopher Anatra will know that this is one of his expertise, as well as our buddy Shane Robinson. He's really good at that too. And I like this saying, it's always the small pieces that make the big picture. That's what I rely on as a theorist. All the small pieces of evidence to try to paint me a picture. It's a weird picture right now, more like an abstract. What evidence do we have for message theory? There have been a few researchers who have tried to decode Mandela effects in some really unique ways. Some very intricate, and some have been able to tease out some meanings. I knew one guy who would take a Mandela effect and he'd run it through every stock market, every quantum computer database, anything he could match it up to try to make patterns, try to make connections. Things that I wouldn't even thought of. So there's people that have taken this a number of different routes. Some believe they're messages that we're headed for a golden timeline, as you hear us talk about a lot here at IMEC, which I think there's got a lot to do with it. I did a little message thing myself in the early days. I took all the words that had been Mandela affected back then. I'm sure it'd be crazy to do now. And I took the letters, there were single letter changes, and I did 2 different lists. And I was actually able to make a semblance of words out of one of the lists. Again, I was working like 5 words or 6 words, so it's not like I had a large set of information to deal with. I don't think it would work just the same now. Does it predict future effects, the message theory? No. Unfortunately, this has not been able to predict any effects that we've known of. Now, message theory could, by the way. If we could understand the messages and understand what's being said in each Mandela effect, perhaps we could understand what the next one is going to be, or when the next one is going to be. It's a theory. Perhaps. I'm not saying we can yet. Does it have scientific backing, this theory? Not really. Being this theory is included with a lot more opinion, it isn't exactly scientific based. It's a lot more, I think it means this. You may think it means that. It's interpretation opposed to science. Does it explain the Mandela effect? Possibly. Jury's still out on this one. But as of right now, I can say it does not fully explain the Mandela effect. There is a lot more work being done on this by a lot of people that I know, so stay tuned for more information on that. Now, there's a variant of this that I've come up with called prophecy theory. Something I've been considering for a while. It's the first time I've actually spoken about it publicly. This theory states that instead of random messages, they're actually prophetic signs of what is to come in this world. So this idea goes to the revelation that speaks of signs and wonders in the end times in the Bible. So I know you guys are saying, well, this is a little weird. Well, if you guys aren't, you guys probably are, right? So let's look at some of these. In the early days, we had a lot of retail Mandela effects. Suddenly we had a retail apocalypse. A lot of those stores that had Mandela effects don't exist anymore. A lot of them. So then we have stuff like, well, how would the Rainbow Mountains play into things? Have you guys been watching the news lately? Just saying. There's a lot of rainbow activity in society right now. I'm going to leave it at that because we can't get political. But again, could this be a sign of something that was to come? The Berenstain Bears, that's German. We found a lot of connections to Germany in the Mandela effect. Could it have a future purpose here in America? I don't know. I have no idea. This, again, is a theory. But if you look at all the different Mandela effects, there is a possibility that each one is a prophetic sign of something to come in this world. And what also makes me think this is we have Bible effects. Again, we have the Bible. That has always thrown me off that we have effects in the Bible. So, do we have evidence for this part or this particular variant of the theory? Again, a lot of stores were spotted with the logos that no longer exist. All of the products that were affected by the Mandela effect belong to companies in America that America is starting to heavily boycott. A lot of the Mandela effect products are a lot of the stuff that is now being boycotted. Now, is that a coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. But it is an interesting little connection I've found over the last year or so when I start looking at individual Mandela effects. Well, what does the map changes have to do with it? I don't know. I can't explain that one. But it is interesting just the same. Does it predict future effects? Possibly. If the theory is true, then it literally is predicting future outcomes in reality on a much more grand scale. It is literally prophesying what is to come in reality. Does it have scientific backing? No. Correlation is not always causation, unfortunately. There is not enough data to determine specifically that this is the case. There's a lot of circumstantial data that I just went over, and you're more than welcome to please continue to dig into these ideas if this is what you're into. But there's no real evidence to point to it and say, yep, that's it. Does it explain the Mandela Effect? No. Because it does not explain every single Mandela Effect, nor does it account for flip-flops. So I'm still having an issue working this one out, but as you see, it's a very interesting theory. Quantum immortality. So this is the idea that we never really die from our own perspective. This is, okay, so say I had a heart attack standing here talking and I died in this reality. I know, it's getting dark. I know, I'm trying not to. To me, I just stood back up as a false alarm, continued my talk, and everything was good. But in another reality, paramedics showed up and carried me off to the morgue, right? This is the idea that in quantum immortality, from my point of view, come in, from my point of view, I would never have died. What evidence do we have for this? Aside from Mandela effects themselves, we really don't have a lot of evidence. Does it predict future effects? No. Does it have scientific backing? Sort of. Quantum immortality or quantum suicide exists in quantum physics as a thought experiment to prove Hugh Everett's many worlds theory. This is the thought experiment of Schrodinger's cat from the perspective of the cat. Something you don't normally think about, right? Does it explain the Mandela effect? Though this theory builds heavily on the concepts of quantum physics and as well as jumper theory, it does not explain flip-flops or a number of other categories of the Mandela effect. Remember, it hasn't explained all categories. That's been one of the biggest issues I've led into in doing theories, is making it fit every single category, or finding something, I say making it, finding something to fit every single category. Number 8, we heard about this yesterday. The devil did it. The devil's responsible for the Mandela effect. He caused all these changes. He made everybody confused. And I know it sounds like I'm making fun of this theory. I'm really not. I swear I'm not. I have a lot of respect for the Christians. Just as it sounds, this theory states that the devil is responsible for the Mandela effect. With the Bible itself changing, which has always just seemed so out of place to me, I can see how this makes sense. But what evidence is there? Bible changes. That's kind of a big piece of evidence for the devil, right? Bible changes. Would God change the Holy Scriptures? Can the devil change the Scriptures? What do you guys think? Can the devil change the Scriptures? Yes or no? So, I've got 2 things to say on that. Number 1, like I said yesterday, did God write the Scriptures? No. God's hand didn't come down there and write that book. So, it's man-made. Everything man-made can change in the Mandela effect. We know this. Number 2, in the book of Job, the enemy, the devil, went to God and asked to mess with Job. He didn't just go to Job and start ruining his life. God gave him permission. Let that one sink in. God gave him permission. So if he's changing the Bible, do you think that God's up there going, oh, you shouldn't do that? Or do you think God said, go ahead, test the believers? I don't know. It just makes sense to me. Is the Bible God's word? Like I said, we just went through that. I'm not going to go on that diatribe again. Does it predict future effects? Maybe. If we consider Revelation in the Bible, we're truly living in the end times. And if the Mandela effect is one of the many signs and wonders, then yes, it could possibly be predicting that the future is pre-written in the holy text. Does it have scientific backing? No, unfortunately, the devil is not scientifically accepted. Go figure. And does it explain the Mandela effect, folks? No. Although there are some changes that could be explained by this, I just don't see what is gained by the devil moving around land masses and creating that kind of confusion. Perhaps it is for confusion. Perhaps. I also can't explain the mandanimals or the flip-flops with the devil theory. Then again, you can never rule the possibility out that the devil exists, right? Space and natural effects. So this is a newer theory. This is a theory that 2 or 3 of us have been working on kind of quietly in the background. And this states that some type of natural phenomenon is related to the Mandela Effect, whether it be space weather, solar bursts, galactic energies, something even here from the middle of the Earth, who knows. But something natural, not something man-made or that we've created, just a natural effect of nature could be responsible for it. What evidence do we have for this? This is a new theory, and a few of us have been working on it, so we've not really fleshed it out. I'm going to be honest with you. There is a specific, now this is interesting. We found this, myself, Chick, and SMQ had somebody contact us a few years ago, and tell us about the signal that they found in the data of the Schumann resonance. I don't know if you guys have looked at that, but it shows the ELF sonogram, I'm sure you've all seen, with the pretty colors on it. And then there's data scripts that show the like up and down, the bar graph, if you will. That's where we find our shift signatures. There's a specific signature that shows up in this data of the Schumann resonance. And every time there is, the community starts telling me we've had a shift. I never put it out there that I found the signal. I always have 2 or 3 people that I share it with, and we wait. And 9 times out of 10, the community will validate that signal. So we know the Schumann is connected somehow. We don't know how directly. But so let's look at the Schumann. So the Schumann resonance is made up of 2 different elements. The ground element with the lightning that goes on around the world, that creates a frequency within the ionosphere and the Earth. However, where that ionosphere lies in relation to the Earth is dependent upon the space weather, the solar activity, the amount of pressure coming off of the sun and pushing on it. So that cavity changes, ergo the frequency changes, right? What if on the outside something else in that space weather is causing us to shift? Perhaps it's the interaction of certain neutrons, neurons, or protons. When they act, they shift us or phase us to a different reality, if you buy the jumper theory. I know we speak in those terms a lot. I try not to because I don't follow any theory specifically, but it does make you wonder, right? So perhaps space weather is the blame. Again, partial affected by space weather is the Schumann resonance. Does it predict future effects, though? Yes and no. If this theory is correct, then yes. Based on space weather and solar activity, we will be able to predict the timing of a shift. Oh, we had an X flare, an S flare, and another X flare. Oh, we've got a shift coming, you know? And that's just an example. I don't know if that's the case or not, of course. But we may be able to use data like that to determine when a shift is about to happen. It would not determine what would change next as far as what Mandela Effect would be next, but it would tell us to look for them in this time period. So if this holds true, this could be a very amazing theory. Does it have scientific backing? Yeah. Space weather and solar activity tend to have a lot of scientific backing. Matter of fact, I think they're the ones that come up with all that, right? So it does have a scientific basis. Does it explain the Mandela Effect? Maybe. Again, this theory is very new, but as you see, as we continue tracking this, we may be able to use this as a sort of explanation for the Mandela Effect. Right now, it's all up in the air. This right here, I'm almost done, ladies and gentlemen. I've only got 10 theories. I know I'm probably another 10, 15 minutes over. I do apologize. This theory states the reality itself is a simulation of sorts. If the reality is a simulation, Mandela Effect will be nothing more than a glitch in the simulated matrix. You could also make up the shape of maps, Earth, space, the shape of anything you want. Just program it to be how you like it to be, right? Before we get into this, I have a major issue with this theory. I feel this is a cop-out. Because this can literally cover and be anything you want it to be. It's a shapeshifter theory. Now, does that mean it's wrong? No, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It means I think it's a cop-out is all that means. What evidence do we have? The chance that we live in base reality is 1 in a billion, Elon Musk. He's a pretty smart guy. I'm not saying he knows everything, but he's a pretty smart guy. Now, when you couple that with this information right here, this gave me chills when I first heard this. Dr. James Gates, physicist, found computer code embedded in the mathematical equations that describe reality. I'm going to repeat that. He found computer code in the equations of reality. You don't get that every day. Specifically, this computer code was error-correcting code, the same thing you find in your web browser. Error-correcting code. Now, when it comes to the Mandela Effect, those three words right there seem kind of important. Is reality trying to correct itself? Is that why we see the Mandela Effect? Was there something that it's trying to correct and is overcorrected or undercorrected each time? I don't know. It's a theory. The Mandela Effect, jots, ghosts, virtually any other paranormal occurrence could be explained with simulation theory. Again, it's a catch-all. It's a shapeshifter theory. You can make it be anything you want it to be, make it explain anything you want it to explain. Because all it is the programmer changing the code, right? We'll get to that in a moment. Does it predict future effects? Not really, but it does predict there will be more. Because we don't predict that there's going to be more glitches, we already see it's happening. Does it have scientific backing? Oh yeah. There are some scientists exploring this concept. Definitely. Does it explain the Mandela Effect? Yes, it can, if a reality is a simulation. So, like I said, I don't like this theory. Again, because it's a catch-all. Now, I'm going to caveat this. And instead of a programmer, what if the programmer, as we were discussing on the first day with Tom Campbell, is consciousness? The larger consciousness system, the LCS, the programmer of reality. I would accept simulation theory under that guise. As a matter of fact, that was what my talk in 2019 or 2020 was about, was the theory of everything in relation to consciousness. We don't know what we don't know, the unknown unknown. So this is the last thing we have here, folks. We don't know what we don't know. I haven't found a theory yet, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't see a single theory in there that had a smoking gun. That said, yep, this is definitely the answer. So that means it comes down to the unknown unknowns. After almost a decade of research, I don't believe we have enough information to determine the cause yet. I think there's still pieces of the puzzle that we ain't got. But in the end, ladies and gentlemen, all you can do is look at the evidence, apply a little common sense, and you be the judge. Thank you.
So much. Thank you so much. Is this working?
Yeah, it should be working.
Okay. So I think we're ready for questions. So if anybody has a question, why don't we pick someone who has never asked a question yet? Anybody new? Got a new person? Yeah, come on up. And you got your mic on?
Great talk.
Thank you.
Oh gosh. Oh my God. Okay, you say you don't think we can go in between dimensions or realities.
On a personal level, I
On
don't.
a personal
Right,
level.
right.
Okay. And the veil, the hole in the veil. Well, I want to tell you about an experience and see what you think about the hole in the veil thing.
Okay.
And Shane knows about this. Where'd Shane go? He was supposed to be right
He's
here.
around here, I assure
He
you,
was
he's
supposed to
around
be right here when I pointed. Anyway. Oh, you're not. Anyway, I'm sitting inside my RV that I live in, and it's contained, nothing over my head. And I'm sitting there in meditation one day, and I always ask for signs and, just delightful things happening.
Right.
And I'm sitting there, my eyes closed, and something fell flat onto the table in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Out of thin air was a brass ring that it was like it wasn't a ring, the jewelry, but it was a ring for a fixture or something.
Right.
Just flat on the table as if somebody just dropped it. It didn't bounce or anything. And I opened my eyes and I'm like, what just happened? Where'd that, because there's nothing literally over my head in this RV, enclosed inside.
Right.
It just fell out of the air.
Mm-hmm. Like apparated out of midair.
It physically formed out of thin air,
Mm-hmm.
which, I thought, well, maybe that's where the saying came from. It showed up out of thin air. This thing showed up out of thin air.
Mm-hmm.
Would you consider that maybe a hole in a veil? I mean, where something came through?
Like I said on the jumper theory, even though that's not my favorite, most of the evidence suggests that is the case, or it would be closer to the case. So unfortunately, for myself, how I would explain that is maybe a shift occurred or reality kind of ripped open, and at that moment it was supposed to be there. You know what I mean?
It
But
just,
because it wasn't there in your
yeah,
version
and
of
it just had the
reality.
feel of somebody just dropped it with intention.
right,
It didn't
right.
fall through, you know. But and Shane was the first one. I mean, I contacted Shane and said, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe what just happened." But so
Know
that was.
anybody at Hogwarts?
No, I've never even seen that. I had to get past the religious thing
Right,
of wizardry. You know, it's like I don't want to go to hell for that. But now I know better.
But no,
But-
when it comes to theories, the multiverse theory is the only one I could see to explain that. Now, hole in the veil, I don't think is hole in the veil, and the reason is the two sides of the veil, one is spiritual and one is us.
Yeah.
So it's physical, non-physical is the whole thing there. So
Okay.
I wouldn't see them dropping rings and jewelry out into our side.
Right.
Not to say it
it's
couldn't happen.
Pretty random.
but-
Pretty random.
Right.
Oh, okay. And then another one between the dimensions. I was sitting at the Arkansas River where I live just 2 miles from, so I go to the river a lot. And I'm sitting there looking at it, and it's not right. I couldn't put my mind around it, but I noticed the water was flowing backwards. As I'm sitting there watching the water flowing from Arkansas back into Oklahoma, which should not happen.
No, ma'am.
I've been at that river for 40 plus years and
Right.
never seen the river flowing that way.
Right.
And as I'm sitting there wrapping my mind around the water and thinking, does anybody else seeing this, which nobody was, I look up at the bridge spanning Arkansas and Oklahoma, and there was a cable hanging down from the bridge. Well, I crossed that bridge, and that disturbed me just a little bit.
Right.
I really focused in on that cable, looking at it swinging back and forth. Well, I looked back at the river that I couldn't take my eyes off of. I looked back at the bridge, no cable. And so I'm sitting there going, well, did the wind blow it up in there? Because it was a long cable.
Right.
So I focused on that, going, where did that cable just go that was hanging there? The wind must have blown it. So I looked back at the river, looked back, and there's the damn cable hanging again. And it's like, I had to get up and leave. It was just,
Right. Right.
I actually went to another portion of the river to see if it was flowing backwards, and it wasn't. So, mind-blowing stuff. But when you witness something like that, turn your head, look back, it's changed. Turn your head, look back, it's back. The only thing my mind could wrap around was that dimensional shift.
Right.
But why would I, in one breath, be out of it, and then the next breath be back in it?
Right.
So,
Yeah, I don't have the
Gary,
explanation
explanations for
but-
that, please.
So yeah, I would agree with you. That sounds more the interdimensional shifting idea. I can't explain that with simple logic. I know that. There is no logic, no ma'am. Yeah, I really don't know the answer to that one. That's interesting. And I get stories like that all the time of different like weird oddity moments that there's no logic for it. So yeah, I see why a lot of people jump to the jumper theory. It does cover on the base level a lot of that stuff. So unfortunately, as much as I don't like it, that's the only answer I would have.
Thanks for bringing up Jordy Rose. Yeah,
My
that
pleasure.
I mean, he was a big shift, especially for me. I got a background in network engineering and cryptologic linguistics, so code for me. And
Yes.
the way that he explained it was just spot on. But my question is about actually your second theory of time travel. Us as humans, we tend to make laws after we screw things up.
Right.
And so my question is, if we are sitting here basically in our life watching maybe the 1940s version of the atomic bomb, those people did not know what uranium was. They didn't know what plutonium was. If I came out at that time and I said, don't worry, we got rules about that. We can fix that. All right, we'll just control the uranium. Right. No one would understand what I'm talking about.
Right.
They would say, I've heard of that before, but how do you enrich it? How do you do this? How do you do this? I'm saying the laws that would control that particular factor haven't been fixed yet. And your quote about not knowing what you don't know by Jim Mars, do you think it's possible that we don't understand this and we're all guessing and we're supposed to guess? Because that's what's going to lead to the laws that we will all create in order to get this thing under control.
That is a fascinating question, my friend. I've never really thought about that. Yeah, I could say you probably are onto something. Being a pioneer in the field, along with my fellow IMEC members, I would say that we are kind of writing the way in right now, writing the laws, writing the how-tos, if you will. We are original researchers. We're the ones trying to figure out on the ground what's going on. So yeah, I would agree with that, that it is possible that what we're finding out right now could be later on used in a temporal fashion to write the laws of time travel, or the laws of new physics. Or I'm really hoping our work leads to new physics. I am. I'm hoping we lead to new laws of physics based a lot on the stuff that we ourselves have researched and brought forward. That is one of my goals.
Excellent. Yes.
So Jerry, thanks for presenting all those different ideas and topics and theories and what works, what doesn't work, etc. These are all things for us to consider, right? It's all part of our journey to figure out what resonates, what doesn't resonate, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, etc. So when you were one of the things you were talking about, I think when you were going through timelines, was a question that you had about who is in the body before us, so to speak.
Yes.
So if we've jumped timelines, who is it? What happened? So I think most people realize or have a comprehension about the whole concept of consciousness, that we're basically, this is all consciousness energy. So there is something I wanted to do to maybe answer part of that question.
By all means, please.
Okay, so to kind of describe a little bit, I'll call it dream technology, how the dream technology works, is that who was in that body before, you would call it a placeholder. So, and then you have to take a step back, because what's linear time? Does linear time actually exist? That's a topic as well.
Right.
And if we've had all these different lifetimes, let's say we've been in the body of 1,000 different avatars, the concept is that they're all happening right now at the same time. So you have that concept as well. And then to add to that, there's the who's who of the reality. There are the player characters, and then what Dolores Cannon would call the backdrop actors, the NPCs. The NPCs exist in all of the frequency dimensions. So you can take each frequency dimension, break it down into octaves, and the NPCs are in every single one of them. Player characters are resonating a little bit differently. So as a player character's frequency rises, it can move into a higher placeholder. Therefore, we wake up in a body where the heart is in the center of our chest. Or we have now the cryptochrome magnetic sensors in our eyes, or whatever it is. So I just wanted to mention that, for people that don't know, just to be aware, there's the whole placeholder concept. And then that goes back a step. So if you've raised in your frequency and you're dealing with another player character, are you dealing with a placeholder from a lower frequency?
Right.
So it gets a little bit interesting and maybe a little bit complicated until you wrap your head around it. But then once you do, it's like, oh, the placeholder concept might work. So I wanted to include that.
I fully get the placeholder concept. I get that. I've never heard of it until this, of course. But yeah, I fully understand what you're saying. I can definitely integrate that.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Question from Sean Bond.
Wow, really good presentation. I think you were like sharpening a tip of a spear so that it can penetrate into mainstream media. And
You got it.
Because I can see you going places with this. Very neutral, very on the fence. Okay, so yeah, thank you for that, and great pieces all together. My hypothesis would be that not just one thing is a causation, and a lot of things you present would be a mesh into the causation. And I also agree with your concept of, what if simulation theory was meshed with consciousness,
right,
and everything being one and conscious and like a system altogether? I agree. And that goes with my experience, at least, that me and Chris teach a method to go with scientific method to try to detail into knowingness and see if it's solidified. And I'd like it if people like you and me and more people checked each other's work, right, and went into a system of, does that come up for you? That, and as we're like reading into this stuff of what is the effect for things. So like with jumping theory and a lot of these other theories combining together, like a certain percentage may be caused by, maybe 2% caused by time travel, like a certain percentage caused by, this, that. I'd say that's part of the micro system of consciousness, getting into the game of what we describe as a timeline or a container for a play or a movie in a different way. And then we're course correcting, like you were going into, President Wonderful. And like bigger authorities holding on to smaller authorities to be able to grow into more. They start with themselves, their
Right.
body may be coming with them. Maybe it's changing, like from a state of illness to a state of like you suddenly healed overnight, the tumor shrunk, whatever.
So let me go ahead and stop you right there because we've only got time for one question. You seem to be fading into another one there. So I do think you bring a great point. And that is the fact that I've presented a lot of single theories, but it may not be just one theory. It could be a combination of a couple of these or some that I've not even thought of yet, right? So I don't want anybody to think this is the end-all, be-all of theories right here. These are just the top 10, right? So you bring a good point. It could very well perhaps be dual theories or dual things going on at the same time. As a matter
You did
of fact,
very well, though.
I might make that my next talk next year, the dual theory ideas, right?
Oh, great presentation altogether, so thank you so much.
Well, I thank you, sir.
Thank you so very much. Let's have a big round of applause.